Alright, so we're checking out a Silver Ana. First and foremost thing that I'm kind of noticing is think about where you're standing right now. Generally speaking, this actually is the superior position, but because your Rhine's not here, it is not. This is not where I would be standing. Because if they have a Widow or anything, you will easily die. Now your Diva left you, so you're all alone up here. You really need to leave. Your Ryan is critical behind you. Man, now both of your other support and your Ryan died because you didn't even notice, and your Diva. Okay, brutal. We gotta really look into some of the where we're standing, why we're standing there. So it's really common in silver, in even gold it can go into, is people know stuff like, oh, this is a good spot, or oh, high ground is important. And so they'll take the high ground and they'll never leave it. And I believe that's what just happened to you. You had what is classically known and generally known as a really good spot to hold, but your team wasn't there, which makes any spot a bad spot. And so you couldn't heal your Rhine, you couldn't heal your Diva, you couldn't heal your Brig, and you kind of stayed on that spot even when you were getting pressured. Like, that's such an easy way for you to die. Other thing, like specifically on your Ana that's big so far. Okay. Other thing that's big so far, specifically on your Ana, is you don't have to scope in to hit every shot. Like this right here on this Diva, why are you scoped in? And then the other thing is, let's not use our ult just to heal the Genji. You have no clue where your enemies are. Nanoblade is a super powerful combo, but you had no way to know that your enemies were close enough to die to Nanoblade and stuff. You couldn't see them. Your Genji wasn't ready. He kind of just dashed in and went for it once he got nanoed. So let's try and be a little bit more careful with that. Let's try and make sure that we're not just kind of throwing our ult randomly. Okay. So a big thing we could do right here is, and this is just in general too, is we can hit tab more than when we're just dead. Because that's going to let us know what the enemy is running. That's going to let us know kind of, it allows us to kind of think about ults. Like Diva just had a big bomb. And part of the reason that I'm mentioning that right there is truly, I wasn't even sure if you guys had a Brig anymore. Because I hadn't seen her in a very long time. And if you tap tab every once in a while, which you kind of just did a couple times right there, it allows you to really look at that and think about that. Like here, when I'm looking at this tab, I'm saying, okay, so I didn't see Monkey ult, so that's probably about to come. I didn't hear Widow use her sights, so I'm probably going to need to play in a little bit of a safer position. Not to mention they now have a Widow, so that also changes where I play and how I play. And I don't believe Mercy used her ult, so that means that they're going to have a lot of healing this fight. And I can call that out to my team. It can change the way I play. Maybe, you know, if they have grab, you don't want to play right next to your tanks. Like, think about you're standing so out in the open right now, and if that Widow wanted to hit any of those shots, you would have died. And you're still kind of in the open.
Is ready to deploy. Go. I should be you.
Cool, so you should leave this high ground. Kind of same thing we talked about before, it's not always good to have the high ground. like you kind of were trapped in that room for a long time, and now you don't know where to go because it's kind of too late to rotate, and now you didn't even get to use your ult. Like, you really got to think about where you're standing, okay? And Horizon Lunar Colony is an interesting map because there actually isn't a ton of fantastic choices for an Ana. There is a couple pretty practiced places, and that's it. All right, so this platform is one of them. This platform on the high ground is another one. In this room here, kind of playing within like this square, because it leaves you the mega and it leaves you a big window that you can shoot out of, and snipers aren't generally going to kill you, is another one. And then about the only other place that I think is viable sometimes is playing in kind of this groove here and kind of under the platform there. And so platform. Okay. So we can label these as 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And those are generally the best places for an Ana to stay on this map. So let's kind of go through the pros and cons real quick about why you would play in each one and why you wouldn't. So with this one over here, number 1, you would play in this one if your team really wanted to kind of hold point. They wanted to be kind of in this area, and if your enemy team is running something like double snipers, like Hanzo Widow, because Hanzo Widow, if they're good, like to take different angles, right? And so, in theory, one of them will come maybe over here, and one of them will come maybe over here. So if you're playing inside of one, that makes it really hard for either of them to immediately get to you. And ideally, you would be very cautious to consistently take peeks. You don't like go over here, but just to look over here to make sure there's not a flanker coming for you or something. And then as long as you're listening to your headphones well, taking those peeks, if the enemy team does decide to rotate this way, 1 is super convenient because you just fall back and rotate to 2 or 3. And so that is why 1 is oftentimes one of my favorite spots on this map. But so let's say we're not taking 1. Instead, we want to take 2. 2 is great when the enemy team does not have something like double sniper, because 2 allows you to have basically free reign. The sightlines on 2 are intense because you can see all of this. Literally everywhere your team could be, you can see from 2. And that's like the big advantage of 2, because your team can. So let's say this is your team here. They can hold this high ground and you can give them heals. They can hold point and you can give them heals. They can push up to this choke and you can give them heals. They can meet your enemies over here and you can give them heals. They can be trying to break a spawn camp over here and you can give them heals. And so 2 is great. Of course I did. 2 is great for that kind of stuff. But 2 is super vulnerable if they have any sort of snipers, because you have no cover and your only cover is back here, which leads to you not being able to see very much. So that's the pros and cons of 2. So then if we go to 3, which in case you don't remember, it's kind of anywhere within this zone here. 3 is nice if you're having a really hard time surviving. You keep getting dove, your enemy team is very coordinated. Maybe they have dive tanks and a sniper or something like that, and so that kind of closes off a lot of 1 and 2 because you can duck back into spawn. You have really good cover on this side, as well as there's like some boxes right here that also give you good cover, and it gives you long enough sight lines. You can heal anywhere on the point, and you can generally have a good time at 2 or at 3. So 3. And then there's 4. 4 is an okay position. It is my least favorite by far. The only time that 4 is appropriate is when your entire team is holding right here and you guys are trying to stuff them at this high ground. The enemy team just really wants the high ground for some reason. That's the only time 4 is appropriate because it allows you to put out massive heals, no missed shots. Generally, you'd have like a Ryan shielding here, so you shouldn't really be in very much danger. There's an L-shaped cover right here that lets you be somewhat safe, and that's about it. So I don't like 4 a lot of times because eventually you have to leave the high ground. Eventually, if your team has any brain, the enemy team has any brain, they will go for the point. And so eventually you need to leave this. Well, your team needs to leave this first and foremost. You shouldn't be contesting point. So your team leaves, and now you're super exposed here. You can get dove. You can, you're exposed to snipers if you want to stand out enough to where you can see the point or anything. And so that's why if you're going to hold 4, I already don't necessarily agree with it, but if you're going to hold 4, your escape route needs to look something like this. And it's really just rotating back to 3. So I hope all those positions made sense because it's one of the biggest things that I notice Annas mess up on this map. Just not knowing which one to hold, which one's appropriate for those circumstances. Like 2 is my personal favorite a lot of times, but I see Annas hold up here when they're going against double sniper, and so they get sniped right away. And so you need to really think about where you're holding. And what happened there is you held the 4 position, which already isn't a great position, and then your teammates weren't up top, so that made the 4 position like the worst possible. And then you rotated the wrong way when it was time to leave 4. And so it was just a series of mistakes in our positioning there that led to us having no value that last fight.
I'm in A5. 4, 3, 2, 1. Attack commencing. Capture objective A.
One of the easiest pieces of advice too that I give all the time is if you're on a healer, Lucio, Ana especially this works for, and you don't know where to stand, you don't know what to do exactly, stay around your main tank, your Reinhardt, and you can very easily get value because you can constantly heal them, which then allows them to make space for your DPS, and you can have a really good time.
Kill hamster. And you're dead.
Cool, so we haven't hit tab at all, so we don't even know if they have a widow or something, and we're walking in these super open sight lines like 3-4 times in a row.
Regroup.
Twice.
It'll take more than that to keep me out of the fight.
Winston, come back. You have no healers.
Dein Schutzengel ist da.
I have your back.
Okay. So do you think we should have nanoed our Rhine there, or do you think our Rhine is just being mostly suicidal? Because I think that your Rhine is being mostly just suicidal.
Go point. Turret down, turret down. Mercy, mercy, mercy. Heal.
It's just a scratch. You'll be fine.
No, just cap, just cap, just cap, just cap. Just stay in.
Objective A captured. Commence attack on objective B.
Enemy target.
Why not just sleep him? When he was moving in a predictable circle, you should have slept him, not when he was running away.
Ultimate is ready.
Down 2, we're down 2.
Name. Get here. You're going to be okay.
Your like indecisiveness over whether or not to scope in, whether or not to pocket a target, is really getting a lot of your teammates killed. And that's partially on them, like they need to play a little bit safer, but like what you have to remember is just like when you're in like Grandmaster, you can expect certain things out of your teammates because they're Grandmasters. When you're in Silver, you have to expect certain things out of your teammates because they're Silver. And so
Go, 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 go.
you gotta think about where your team's gonna be positioned and what you can do to help them.
Rana's on Olga.
Cool, just stay in this corner. You can heal everyone and not be in any danger on point. Like you're putting yourself in more danger for no reason.
Take the point.
Would have been cool if you were in that corner and you could have slept that Rhine. Wouldn't even be a risk of him charging anyone.
Genji
Nice
sleeping,
sleep.
Genji sleeping, man.
Monkey low, monkey.
Yeah, unfortunately, another positioning error there that led to big consequences for us and our team.
Kill this monkey, kill this monkey. Nice, nice, nice.
Nanoboost is ready. Get in there. I'll get
Oh no.
Bastion torch. Have no healers.
Standing right out in the open when you can see their comp. Their comp would love you to stand out in the open. The turret can farm you. The Widow can farm you.
Can...
I need healing. Need healing.
You're going to live.
Genji.
Oh no.
Oh, nice. We got a pick, we got a pick. Rest a low.
Lovely, lovely.
We're up
Go,
two,
go, go,
we're up
go,
two.
go.
Push, 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 push.
Oh shoot.
You're standing in the open against a Widow right now. Like if she would just turn and shoot you, you would be dead. And that may not seem like a big deal right now to get it silver, but the thing about it is, as you start climbing, you'll go against better and better Widows. And that is something that will stop you from climbing. So why not get out that bad habit right now? And there's definitely been some other stuff. I mean, if I was reviewing you as like a Masters player, like I would be talking about your nade usage and some of that stuff. But right now, you have bigger things that you can improve on. So I want you to focus on your positioning and stuff like that before anything else. And I think that that's probably going to about wrap this one up, because you don't really need me to give you 40 minutes of telling you that your positioning isn't great. Again, just kind of our indecision there, whether or not we were going to do damage or heal.
Can we not give them that? Can we keep going?
Your Ana's dead.
Yeah. Alright, so I would focus on your positioning, definitely. That's like your number one thing, and I hope that you got some good tips in there, and I hope that you, saw some of the drawings and stuff like that. And then I would also focus on your alt usage, not just throwing it randomly. And I think that you'll start to have a better time, and then get another VOD review. See how things are going once you've fixed that. But just based off fixing your positioning, you'll get to, at a minimum, gold. And fixing your indecisiveness. That is a big one. You have had a lot of indecisiveness. This is a weird change. You've had a lot of indecisiveness that has gotten your team killed so many times, and I'm worried that that continues. And if that's something that persists in your games, that's definitely something that would hold you back